The crosshairs lined up perfectly. My finger hovered over the trigger. One shot. That was all it would take to end this man's life, to end the lie, to end everything. But then, I heard her voice. She saw me through the window. It wasn't supposed to go down like this. I had everything planned. Every detail, every move, every second counted. The wind was calm, the distance was right, and the timing would be perfect. All I had to do was squeeze the trigger, and I would no longer be married to the woman who had ruined everything we built. But I froze. She was standing in the doorway, her eyes wide, her lips trembling in some combination of shock and guilt. I didn't expect her to come out. I didn't expect her to catch me red-handed, to see me standing there with a sniper rifle aimed at the man I'd once called my brother. And I certainly didn't expect her to speak. Ryan. Her voice was soft at first, hesitant even, as if she was testing the waters. What are you doing? The question hit me like a slap across the face. What was I doing? Was she really asking that? I was doing what any man in my position would do. I was about to end the farce she'd turned our lives into. But instead of answering, I simply stood there, the rifle still resting in my hands, and I looked at her. There was no sense of urgency on her face, no pleading, no apology, just confusion. And that infuriated me even more. What the hell do you think I'm doing, Kelly? My voice was steady, but the anger was bubbling up from the pit of my stomach, making my chest tight. You thought I wouldn't find out? You thought you could keep your dirty little secret from me forever. She took a step closer to me, her heels clicking against the floor as she moved, but I didn't budge. I wasn't about to be swayed by her presence or her pathetic excuses. She'd betrayed me, and now she was standing there trying to act innocent. Ryan, please. You don't understand. It's not what you think. She stepped into the room, her fingers running through her hair nervously. Not what I think. I interrupted her sharply. You're standing there, looking at me, knowing that you've been sleeping with him for months. And you're telling me it's not what I think. I could feel the bitterness in my voice, like acid burning through my throat. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She just stood there, her eyes darting between me and the rifle. The moment stretched on, and I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't afraid of me, not really. She wasn't scared of the consequences of her actions. She was scared of what I might do next. That's when it hit me. It wasn't about me at all. It never was. It was about her. Always her. Always her selfish desires. I clenched my jaw, steadying my hands as I placed the rifle down. The weight of what I was doing, what I was about to do, crashed down on me. The tension in the room was suffocating. I could hear the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears, the anger still raw and sharp. I wanted to do something. Anything. But this moment felt like a turning point. I'm done, Kelly, I said, my voice quieter this time. I'm done playing your game. This, whatever this is, it ends now. No more lies, no more pretending. She shook her head, her expression twisting into something I couldn't quite place. Regret? Guilt? Or was it just annoyance that I had figured it out before she could manipulate me further? Ryan, please, she begged, her voice cracking now. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you. I laughed bitterly, but it was more out of disbelief than anything else. Love me? Really? That's rich, Kelly. You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, and now you expect me to believe that you love me. Her eyes flickered, and for the briefest moment, I saw something behind them. Fear. Real fear. Not for her life, but for what was about to happen to her world. Because, in that moment, I knew something she didn't. She had no idea who she was dealing with anymore. I took a step toward her, my voice low but cutting. You had your chance, Kelly. You made your choice. And now, you're going to have to live with the consequences. She stepped back, her face paling as I turned away from her. The last thing I wanted to do was give her any more of my time, my energy, my emotions. She didn't deserve it. But as I walked out of the room, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. She stood there, silent, broken in a way that made me feel nothing. I closed the door behind me. I never thought I'd be in this position, standing on the edge of something I couldn't undo, realizing that everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. The woman I had trusted with everything, the woman I had given my heart to, had been playing me for a fool for who knows how long. I walked down the hall, my footsteps echoing in the empty house. The silence around me felt suffocating, like it was pressing in from every direction. My mind was racing, a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. all trying to make sense of the mess I had just uncovered. I couldn't let it go. I had to know everything, even if it destroyed me further. I had to hear her confess it. I had to know how deep this betrayal went. I thought back to the signs, the little things I had brushed off as nothing. The late nights, the phone calls she would rush to take in the other room, the change in her demeanor. I had been blind, thinking I was just overthinking it. But now it all made sense. Every little piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The door to the living room creaked as I pushed it open. Kelly was still there, sitting on the couch with her head in her hands. Her body was stiff, and I could feel the tension in the room. It was like the air had thickened, a pressure that weighed on both of us. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes swollen and red from crying. "Ryan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen." I stopped dead in my tracks. The words hung in the air, but they meant nothing to me. How many times had I heard her say that? How many times had she promised me everything, only to break it again and again? "I don't want your apologies, Kelly. I don't want your excuses." I let the words spill out, bitter and sharp. "I need the truth. Now." She flinched, and for a moment, I thought she might just break down completely, but instead, she did the one thing I didn't expect. She stood up, wiped her face, and straightened her back as if trying to put up a facade of strength. "All right," she said, her voice trembling. But this time, it held something different. Defiance, maybe? Or was it just resignation? "You want the truth? You want to know why I did it?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms. "I've been seeing him for 6 months. It started as a stupid fling, but it turned into something more. I don't even know why I did it. I don't know what I was thinking. It was just easier. He made me feel alive in a way that you stopped doing a long time ago." My stomach churned. The words she spoke were like daggers, slicing through me with every sentence. Easier? Alive? Did she think that justified it? Did she think I would understand? "Easier," I spat, stepping closer to her. "You think that makes sense? You think that excuses everything you've done? You've been lying to me, Kelly, while I was here, busting my ass to keep us together, to keep this marriage from falling apart. And you've been sneaking around with him, playing your little games." She winced, but didn't back down. I could see the frustration building in her eyes, the realization that there was no way out of this, no way to lie her way out of the mess she'd created. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, her voice soft now, almost pleading. "I never wanted to tear us apart, Ryan. But I've been so unhappy. I needed something more. You don't understand. You didn't see how hard it was." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my chest, but I swallowed it down. "I didn't see? How could I not see when you were never really here? You were always somewhere else, mentally, emotionally, physically. But I guess that was just me being blind, right?" She winced again, this time as if the words actually stung her. Good. She deserved to feel every ounce of the pain she had caused. "I didn't know how to fix it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't know how to fix us. So I found someone who made me feel wanted. Wanted. That was rich. She didn't need someone to make her feel wanted. She had me. I had always been there, always been the one who supported her. But somehow, that wasn't enough. She needed someone else, someone who could fill the void that she had created in her own heart. I gave you everything, Kelly, and you gave me this." My voice cracked on the last word, and I could feel the weight of it. The weight of betrayal. "You think you can just justify it with your 'I needed something more'? That's pathetic." She opened her mouth to say something, but I raised my hand, cutting her off. "No, I don't want to hear any more of your excuses. You've had enough of those over the years. They don't work anymore." I turned away, pacing the room. Every step felt heavy, like I was dragging myself through mud. My emotions were a mess. Anger, hurt, disbelief. But underneath it all, there was something else. Something I couldn't quite place, something that hurt more than anything else. Disgust. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't listen to her. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was a stranger now. And the worst part was, she didn't seem to care. "You've made your choice, Kelly," I said quietly, turning back to face her. "And now, I'm making mine." I had expected a lot of things from Kelly. Anger, tears, maybe even guilt. But this was something I didn't see coming. She stood there, in the middle of the living room, almost unaffected. It was like I wasn't even speaking to her anymore. Like I was talking to a stranger who had no connection to the life we had shared. You made your choice, Kelly. I repeated, my voice low but cutting. The words felt like a hammer against my chest. And now, I'm making mine. She didn't say anything right away. For a long moment, she just stared at me, her eyes blank. It was as though everything I had said went right over her head. No anger, no defensiveness, no panic. She didn't care. She wasn't even afraid of losing me. Are you really going to walk away from everything we built? She finally asked, her voice thick with disbelief. Are you really going to throw it all away because of one mistake? I clenched my fists at my sides. One mistake. I couldn't believe she was still trying to downplay it. You think this is just one mistake? You've been lying, sneaking around, and betraying me for months, Kelly. This isn't just one mistake. This is you throwing away everything we had. And I'm done. I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't stand hearing her make excuses, hearing her try to make herself sound like the victim when she was the one who had destroyed everything. She took a step toward me, her face twisted in frustration. So what now, Ryan? You're just going to leave? You're going to walk away and let him win? My heart pounded in my chest. Let him win. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. You really think I care about him? I care about me, Kelly. I care about my dignity. I care about the fact that I was loyal to you, that I gave you everything, and you turned your back on me. I'm not walking away because of him. I'm walking away because of you. Her eyes widened. It was as if my words had finally hit her, but she wasn't sorry. She wasn't regretful. She was angry. Angry that I had the nerve to stand up for myself. Angry that I wasn't just rolling over and forgiving her. You think I haven't suffered? She snapped. You think this has been easy for me? I'm just as miserable as you are, Ryan. I laughed bitterly. Miserable? You think I haven't been miserable? I've been living a lie for months, and you've been playing me like a fool. You've been out there, with him, while I've been here, trying to make this work. So, yeah, maybe you've been miserable, but you know what? You made your bed, Kelly. Now lie in it. Her face contorted with anger. I don't deserve this, she spat. I never asked for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. Her words were hollow, empty. I couldn't believe she still thought she had the right to play the victim. I was the one who had been betrayed. I was the one who had trusted her with my life, and she had taken that trust and shattered it without a second thought. You don't get to decide what you deserve, Kelly, I said, my voice cold. You don't get to decide what happens next. You had your chance, and you threw it away. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand, stopping her. I'm done with this. I'm done with you. I'm done with the lies. My words were final, no room for debate. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of begging me to stay, of making me feel guilty for walking away. I had done enough of that. I had played the role of the understanding husband for far too long, and now it was time to put an end to it. I turned and walked toward the door, my hand already on the knob. As I stepped out, I didn't look back. There was nothing left to say. No more words, no more pleading. I was done. But as I stepped onto the porch, the weight of everything hit me. This was it. This was the end. I was leaving the woman I had loved for years, the woman I had trusted more than anyone else in the world. And for what? To protect my own sanity, to stop the cycle of betrayal, to finally put myself first. It felt like I was walking away from a lifetime of memories, but it was the only choice I had left. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Kelly's face, twisted in anger and disbelief, trying to make me feel like I was the one who had betrayed her. But I wasn't the one who had lied, who had been sneaking around behind closed doors. No, that was all on her. I tossed and turned, my mind racing through every conversation we'd ever had, every promise she'd ever made. It was like a bad dream that I couldn't wake up from. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? 1 minute, I was living the life I thought I wanted, and the next, everything was in ruins. But it wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the realization that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had built a life with, had never been the person I thought she was. I had trusted her with everything, my heart, my soul, my future. And she had taken it all and thrown it away for someone else. I had never felt more alone in my life. And as much as I tried to convince myself that I was better off without her, the emptiness was unbearable. It wasn't just the loss of the relationship. It was the loss of everything I had worked for, everything I had believed in. The next morning, I woke up early, unable to shake the heaviness that hung over me. I had always been a man who worked hard, who provided, who took care of those around me. But now, I couldn't even take care of myself. I had nothing left to give. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. I barely recognized myself anymore. The man who had stood tall, confident in his marriage, was gone. In his place was a man who felt broken, who felt betrayed, who didn't know where to go from here. I was done with Kelly, but I was still in shock. I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. I didn't know where to start. But I knew I had to keep moving. I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let her make me feel small. She had made her choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number I had been avoiding for days. My best friend, Jake, had been calling and texting me, but I hadn't been able to bring myself to talk to him. What could I possibly say? Hey, Jake, I found out my wife's been cheating on me. Can we grab a beer? But now I needed him. I needed someone who could help me make sense of all this. Someone who wouldn't judge me for feeling lost and confused. Ryan. Jake answered on the first ring. Dude, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you. I know, man, I said, my voice strained. I need to talk. I could hear the concern in his voice. Of course. What's going on? I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to admit it out loud. But I had to. For my own sanity, for my own peace of mind, I had to say it. She's been cheating on me, Jake, I muttered. For months. I found out yesterday. I don't know what to do. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear Jake taking a deep breath before he spoke. I'm so sorry, man. I had no idea. But you're going to get through this, okay? You don't have to deal with this alone. The words were comforting, but they didn't fix anything. I still felt like I was drowning, like I was suffocating under the weight of everything. But hearing Jake's voice, hearing his support, gave me a little bit of strength. I don't know if I can get through this, Jake, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know who I am anymore. She was my world. And now, I'm just lost. You'll find your way, Ryan, he said, his voice firm. You're stronger than this. You're going to come out of this even better. Trust me. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that everything would be okay in the end, that I would somehow come out of this stronger, more whole. But I couldn't see it. Not yet. We talked for a while longer, and by the end of the call, I felt a little less alone. But the ache was still there, gnawing at my insides. I was still reeling from the betrayal, from the realization that the woman I loved had never really been who I thought she was. I spent the rest of the day in a daze. I went through the motions, eating, showering, checking my emails, but everything felt like it was happening to someone else. I was just a bystander in my own life, watching everything unfold from a distance. That night, I sat in the living room, staring at the empty space where Kelly had once sat, where we had once shared everything, our hopes, our dreams, our plans for the future. It felt like a lifetime ago. The house was quiet, too quiet. The silence was deafening. I wanted to scream, to yell, to throw something against the wall. But I didn't. I just sat there, numb, too exhausted to do anything but breathe. I had no idea what was going to happen next. I didn't know if I would ever be the same. But one thing was for sure. I couldn't go back to the way things were. Not with her. Not with the woman who had broken my heart. The following days passed in a blur. I kept telling myself I'd snap out of it, that eventually I would pull myself together, but it didn't happen. The reality of what I had learned kept slapping me in the face every time I woke up. It was a brutal reminder that my world had been turned upside down, and there was no quick fix for it. Kelly wasn't home when I woke up that morning. I didn't expect her to be. She'd probably gone off to meet him again, continuing her little charade, pretending everything was fine while I tried to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. The silence in the house felt different now, more suffocating, more final. There was no comfort in the familiar anymore. Every corner reminded me of the lies, the years I had wasted believing in something that wasn't real. I went through the motions of getting ready, but everything felt mechanical. I ate breakfast, but it tasted like cardboard. I drank coffee, but it did nothing to numb the emptiness inside me. Nothing felt right anymore. I hadn't heard from Kelly since the night I confronted her. I didn't expect an apology or even an explanation. What could she say now? The truth had already come out, and there was no taking it back. But part of me, that stupid part that still held on to the scraps of hope, expected her to try, to beg me to stay, to show some sign that she cared about me, about us. But that didn't happen. She was gone, just like that. I grabbed my keys and left the house, the familiar weight of the car door handle feeling strange in my grip. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I needed to get out of that house. The walls were closing in on me, and I couldn't breathe. I ended up at the local park, sitting in my car, staring at nothing. It felt like I was stuck in some kind of limbo, unable to move forward, unable to move backward. My life had just been torn apart, and I was left to pick up the pieces, but I had no idea how to start. I thought about all the things I had done for Kelly, all the sacrifices I had made. I thought about the times I had put her first, the times I had tried to make her happy, even when she had stopped trying herself. And now? Now, I was left with nothing. Nothing but the hollow ache in my chest and the cold, crushing realization that I wasn't enough. I stayed at the park for hours, just sitting there, trying to figure out what to do next. Should I confront her again? Should I just pack up and leave, walk away from everything we had built together? The thought of packing my things and walking out was tempting. It would be easier. It would be cleaner. But then, there was a part of me that couldn't let go. That part that still loved her. That part that still wanted to fix things, even though I knew deep down that it was already too late. She had made her choice, and I couldn't make it for her. Eventually, I headed back to the house. The lights were off, and the door was locked. It was like Kelly had already made her exit, already moved on to whatever world she had created with him. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw something against the walls, but I didn't. I just stood there, staring at the house, the place that had once been my home. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. It was eerily quiet. There were no signs of her, no traces of the woman who had once filled this space with laughter, with love. It felt hollow now, empty in a way that made my heart ache. I moved through the house slowly, almost as if I was waiting for something to change. But nothing did. I stood in the living room for a long time, just staring at the spot where she had sat the night before. Her perfume was still in the air, faint but there. It made my stomach turn. I walked to our bedroom, and for a moment, I thought I could hear her voice, calling me to join her, but it was just the wind outside. I stood in the doorway, staring at the empty bed. The emptiness seemed to swallow me whole. There was a part of me that still wanted answers, still wanted to know why she had done this to me. But deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't about me. It was about her selfishness, her inability to see what she had before it was too late. I felt the anger rise inside me again. This time, it wasn't the rage of someone who had just found out. It wasn't the anger of betrayal. It was the cold, bitter anger of someone who had been stripped of their dignity, of their sense of self. I had given her everything, and she had tossed it all aside like it was nothing. I wasn't sure what was worse, the betrayal, or the realization that I wasn't even worth the effort to fight for. The phone rang, breaking me from my thoughts. It was Jake. "Hey man," he said. "You good? I know you're going through a lot right now, but you don't have to do this alone." I took a deep breath, my hand gripping the phone tightly. "Yeah, I know. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how to fix this." "You don't have to fix it, Ryan," he said. "You just have to move on. You'll get through this. It's gonna suck for a while, but you'll be okay. And when you're ready, we'll get together, grab a drink, and talk about it. But right now, you need to focus on yourself." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that there was some light at the end of this dark tunnel. But all I could feel was the weight of the world on my shoulders, pressing me down further with each passing minute. "Thanks, Jake," I said quietly, my voice shaky. I don't know how to start over." "You will," he said. "Just one step at a time. One step at a time." That was all I could do now. Step by step, until I could finally breathe again. The days began to blur together, each one indistinguishable from the next. I felt like I was walking through life in a daze, my mind constantly spinning, but my body refusing to cooperate. Everything I had once known, every part of my life I had taken for granted, felt like it had been ripped away from me in an instant. I couldn't focus on anything. Every time I tried to concentrate on work, I ended up zoning out, my thoughts drifting back to Kelly and the mess she had made of our lives. The more I tried to move on, the more I found myself stuck in place. It was like I couldn't escape the memories, the anger, the hurt. It was everywhere I turned. The smell of her perfume lingered on my clothes. The places we used to go together seemed to haunt me, the memories of happier times now tainted with the knowledge that they had all been a lie. I was living in a constant state of frustration. I knew I couldn't keep dwelling on the past, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still so many unanswered questions. Why had she done it? Why had she betrayed me like this? What had happened to the woman I had married? The woman I had trusted more than anyone else in the world. It wasn't just the affair that hurt, it was the way she had acted. The coldness. The indifference. She didn't even seem to care that she had broken me. She didn't seem to care that she had shattered everything we had built. It was like she had already moved on, already found someone else to fill the void. But there was one thing I hadn't done yet. One thing that gnawed at me, the thing that kept me up at night, the confrontation I hadn't had with her lover. I had no idea where to find him, no idea what he even looked like. But I knew one thing. He was part of the reason I was in this mess. He was the one who had come between Kelly and me, the one who had whispered sweet lies into her ear and convinced her to tear everything down. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone. I had spent hours scrolling through social media, searching for clues, hoping to find something that would lead me to him. But there was nothing. Just the usual posts, the usual crap people put up to hide the truth. No one ever posts the real stuff, the stuff that matters. No one ever talks about the betrayal, the broken hearts, the lies. No one ever posts the scars. But this wasn't about me, not really. It was about making sure I didn't let this go unanswered. I had to confront him, to let him know exactly what he had done. I couldn't let him get away with it. I couldn't let him walk around like nothing had happened. Just as I was about to put the phone down, there was a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. Who the hell could that be? I wasn't expecting anyone. No one from work. No friends. I hadn't been out much, hadn't spoken to anyone other than Jake, and even that was brief. I stood up and walked toward the door. I wasn't ready for what I was about to find on the other side. When I opened the door, there she was. Kelly. I stood there, frozen. I didn't want to let her in. I didn't want to hear anything she had to say, didn't want to see her face. Not after everything. But she didn't give me the option. She stepped inside before I could react, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Ryan, please, she said, her voice shaky. I need to talk to you. I stared at her, my chest tightening. I couldn't believe this was happening. After everything she had done, after everything she had put me through, she was standing here like nothing had changed. No, I said, my voice cold. You've said enough, Kelly. There's nothing left to talk about. But she didn't back down. She stepped closer to me, her eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. Was it guilt? Regret? Or was it just desperation? I couldn't tell. I didn't care. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said quietly. I don't even know if you ever will. But I need to explain, Ryan. I need you to understand why I did what I did. I couldn't believe it. She was still trying to justify her actions, still trying to make me see it from her perspective. After everything, she thought that was going to work? You think you can explain your way out of this? I said, my voice rising now. You think that telling me why you cheated is going to make it better? It doesn't change a damn thing, Kelly. You ruined everything. You threw it all away, and now you want to sit here and act like we can fix this. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not anymore. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with my heart, was gone. This woman in front of me wasn't her. This was a stranger, a woman who had taken everything and left me with nothing. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I was lost. I didn't know what I was doing. You knew exactly what you were doing, I said harshly. You knew when you started seeing him. You knew when you lied to me, when you kept sneaking around behind my back. Don't you dare try to say you didn't know. She took a step back, her face crumpling as the tears started to fall. But I didn't care. Not anymore. This was the end. This was what I needed, closure. The truth. I took a deep breath, my anger boiling over now, but it wasn't directed at her anymore. It was directed at the situation, at everything I had lost. I'm done, Kelly, I said, my voice steady. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep going in circles with you. I'm done with the lies. I'm done with the betrayal. I'm done. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw her as she truly was, broken. But I wasn't going to let that make me feel sorry for her. She had done this to herself. She had done this to us. I turned away, walking out of the room without a second glance. It was over. For good. The days after Kelly left were a whirlwind of emotion, but a part of me was already starting to numb to it all. I had imagined that the pain would be all-consuming, that I would wake up every day with the weight of betrayal sitting heavy on my chest. But the reality was something else entirely. The anger, the hurt, they were there, yes. But they weren't as fierce as I thought they would be. It was almost like they were fading, being replaced by something else entirely, apathy. The numbness crept in slowly, like a fog settling over my thoughts. I found myself just going through the motions, living in a haze. It wasn't that I didn't care, it was that I couldn't care anymore. Kelly had taken so much from me, had lied and deceived me in ways I never imagined possible. But in the end, I realized I couldn't let her take my peace, too. I couldn't let her steal my future. I had to move forward. I had to survive, even if I didn't know how. I had always been a man who prided myself on my strength, on my ability to stay focused, to stay grounded. But after everything, I felt like I had lost my footing. It was like the ground beneath me had cracked open, and I was stumbling to find my balance. I decided to leave the house. I didn't want to be there anymore, not with all the memories, not with all the pain. It felt suffocating. The walls were closing in. I packed a few things, grabbed my bag, and walked out. No destination in mind, just away. I needed space. I needed to be somewhere else. I ended up at a small bar on the outskirts of town. It was one of those places that no one really knew about. A hole-in-the-wall kind of spot, the kind where you could sit in the corner and disappear. I needed that. I needed to be invisible for a while. The bartender, an older guy with graying hair, gave me a nod when I walked in. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't need to. He just poured me a drink and left me to my thoughts. I sat at the bar, staring into the glass, watching the ice clink as I swirled it around. I wasn't really there. My mind was still on Kelly, still on the mess she had left behind. But as I sat there, the noise of the bar, the muffled laughter, the clinking of glasses, it started to fade. Slowly, the pain began to recede, replaced by something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not full peace, not yet, but the beginnings of it. I realized then that I had been holding on to the past for far too long. I had been clinging to something that no longer existed. Kelly had made her choices, and I had made mine. I had to stop living in the shadow of her mistakes. I had to stop allowing her actions to dictate my life. The next few days felt like a slow climb back to reality. I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know how to rebuild. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let myself be consumed by this anymore. I wasn't going to let the anger eat me alive. I wasn't going to let her take my future. I started doing small things for myself, things I hadn't done in a long time. I hit the gym for the first time in weeks, feeling the burn in my muscles as I pushed myself harder than I had in ages. It wasn't just physical pain, it was catharsis. It was a release. Every drop of sweat felt like I was shedding the weight of everything that had happened. I started making plans to get my life back on track. I reached out to friends I hadn't spoken to in months, making tentative steps toward rebuilding my social life. I even started looking into new places to live. I knew I couldn't stay in that house. It was full of ghosts now, ghosts of a life I could never get back. But as much as I tried to move on, there were moments when I still found myself thinking about Kelly. I would catch myself wondering what she was doing, if she was still with him, if she was ever going to regret her choices. But every time those thoughts crept in, I forced myself to let them go. I wasn't going to let her have that power over me anymore. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was my fresh start, the place where I could heal and move forward, away from everything that had happened. And even though the pain was still there, buried deep inside me, I could feel the shift. I was starting to take control of my life again. I wasn't going to let Kelly's mistakes define me. I wasn't going to let her define my future. I didn't know what that future looked like yet. I didn't know if I would ever fully heal from the betrayal, from the lies, from everything that had fallen apart. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to stay stuck in the past. I wasn't going to let her keep me in that place of anger and sadness. It was time for me to move forward. It was time for me to let go. The weeks following my move to the new apartment felt like a slow, steady climb out of the hole I had found myself in. The emptiness was still there, lingering in the back of my mind, but it wasn't as overpowering as it had been. Every day, I took small steps toward getting back to who I was before. I focused on what I could control, and slowly, I began to feel the strength returning, not in a way that erased the past, but in a way that allowed me to put one foot in front of the other again. I started getting back into my routine, doing the things that once brought me peace. Working out, taking long walks, cooking meals instead of ordering takeout. It felt good to have some semblance of normalcy. I found myself even smiling again at the small things, the birds chirping outside my window, the sun coming through the blinds in the morning. It was a new kind of peace, one I hadn't experienced in a long time. I started reconnecting with old friends. I reached out to people I hadn't spoken to in months, letting them know I was still here, still alive. It was strange at first. I had spent so much time wrapped up in the toxic cycle of my marriage that I had lost touch with the world around me. I had neglected the people who cared about me. But now, it felt like I was finally starting to reconnect with the world outside of Kelly and the chaos she had caused. I spent more time at the gym, working through the physical and emotional exhaustion that had been weighing me down for so long. I pushed myself harder than before, running until my lungs burned, lifting weights until my muscles trembled. Each drop of sweat, each beat of my heart, felt like a step toward regaining control. And then, something unexpected happened. I met someone. It wasn't a big moment or a grand declaration. It wasn't anything dramatic. It was just a casual encounter at the coffee shop down the street from my apartment. Her name was Sarah, and she worked at the bookstore next door. We struck up a conversation one morning when I was getting my usual cup of coffee. She was friendly, easy to talk to, and had a genuine warmth about her that I hadn't realized I had missed. We talked about books, about life, about everything and nothing. It was the first time in a long time that I felt like I was truly connecting with someone. I didn't expect anything from that conversation. I wasn't looking for a relationship or anything to distract me from the mess I had just gone through. But as the days passed, we found ourselves talking more and more. We exchanged numbers, met for coffee a few more times, and soon enough, it became clear that there was something there. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready for anything serious. I wasn't sure if I could open myself up to someone again after everything that had happened. But Sarah was different. She didn't ask for anything from me. She didn't expect anything. She was just there, a steady presence in my life that didn't try to fix me, but simply accepted me for who I was. One night, after a long day, I sat on my couch, the silence of the apartment wrapping around me. My phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. It was simple, just a funny meme she thought I would like. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled. It wasn't a smile born from the pain of my past, but a genuine smile that came from a place of happiness, however small. I knew I wasn't ready to dive into a relationship, not yet. But I also knew I wasn't alone anymore. And that made all the difference. I didn't need to rush. I didn't need to force anything. I could take my time. I had my whole life ahead of me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a future to look forward to. It was strange, but I began to realize something profound. I didn't need to hold on to the past to build my future. I didn't need to let Kelly's betrayal define me. I had the power to rewrite my story. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be perfect, but it was mine. I spent more time focusing on myself, on what made me happy. I took the things I had learned from the mess of my marriage and used them to build a life that was stronger and more resilient than before. I didn't need someone else to make me feel whole. I could do that on my own. Sarah and I continued to talk, and while I wasn't rushing anything, I knew that whatever happened next, I was ready for it. I wasn't the same person I had been before Kelly's betrayal, and I wasn't sure I ever wanted to be. But I was a version of myself that was stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. For the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future. I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew I had the strength to face whatever came my way. I was no longer weighed down by the past. I was free, and that freedom, that peace, was something I would never take for granted again.